Uriya Julie Pionirane Uriya Tamos in pitching a jaw Celebido Pioya, Chimia, Webshit over Good Uriya pitching a jaw Sebido Pioba man.
In the afternoon, Sayadaw talked so much on the benefits of effort that we did not have time to deal with the ways of arousing energy. Tonight, Sayadaw will talk on the next factor conducive to the arousing of effort.
We had that was in teaching a journey there, Kunakumio, Jongaro, Jadi Mahada, Peswakanat, Sa Absent, Yimia Tetanja, Pico, Singing Jin. Sa Absent, Musa Absent Molly. User Absent, Yimia Tetanja, Pico, Singing Nava.
The seventh factor is reflection on the greatness of the lineage.
Musa like Messoye Tibra did the need I Atoja the Bokumyaha. Paya Soma die, Chindonja Sheto. That's what I say, Dhamma Duedi, Nalundama, when we do. Paya swim you sat to live. Swim you to live.
Because we are meditating in accordance with the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the four foundations of mindfulness given by the Buddha, we can be considered to belong to the noble lineage of Buddhas through the practice of Vipassana meditation. We can obtain a blood transfusion, so to speak, Dhamma blood. And as a result, we can claim to belong to that very noble and great lineage of the Buddha.
Pelauti Piane, Twisa the Lesoye, Piasoma Dai, Chintoni Rapchedo, Yuda Soye, Taro, Yudamisui, the Vido Sipima. We thought about Stew Aniti, the Pyoga Ware, Saman Samudasa, Orasa Buddha Baha, Panidis. Thought about the Meha. Yes, I'll share. Individual need that of the video of she young poopy by a sort of yoga by it. Never thought about shit or the other of the video, sip shit or video.
To what extent can one be considered to belong to this great lineage of the Buddha? If you practice obediently and respectfully according to the instructions of the Buddha, you can be proud to call yourself the Buddha's daughters, and sons. In a previous lecture, Sayadaw had talked about how the noble path consciousness of the stream entrant can bring the yogi to the family by making him or her the Buddha's true-blooded sons and daughters.
မြေပုံရဆိုရင်မြတ်စွာဘုရားဝိဖွားရဌာနမြတ်စွာဘုရားပွင့်ရဌာနနဲ့ဘယ်လောက်ပဲကွာလှမ်းနေနေလူမျိုးအားဖြင့်ဘယ်လိုပဲမတူသည်ဖြစ်စေကိုယ်တို့စိတ်ဓာတ်သုံးပါးလုံးရည်ကြည်ဖို့ရာဒီလက်သမားဒီပညာအကျင့်မှန်တွေကိုမှန်မှန်ကျင့်သုံးနေသီလသွေးသမာဓိသွေးပညာသွေးတွေကမြတ်စွာဘုရားနဲ့ဆုံးမတဲ့အတိုင်းတည်နေတာဘုရားလက်ထက်တော်ကလည်းမြတ်စွာဘုရားဆုံးမတဲ့အတိုင်းကျင့်သုံးလို့သီလသမာဓိပညာသွေးတွေမြင့်ရင့်နေတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များနဲ့တူးနေတာပဲရှိရှိရပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေနဲ့လည်းပဲထိုက်တန်သမျှတူတာပဲအဲ့လိုတူးနေတာကိုပြောတာပါ
No matter how far we may be geographically from the birthplace of the Buddha, no matter how different we may be in terms of race, creed, or clan, is quite immaterial. No matter how different we may be in those respects, as far as we are totally committed to the practice of the threefold training of sila, morality, samadhi, concentration, and panya, wisdom, then we will be filled with the blood of sila, samadhi, and panya. Blood which is similar to that of those noble people during the Buddha's time who underwent the same training. Thus, we may be compared to those seekers of truth during the Buddha's time who were so committed in their striving to realize the Dhamma. To some extent, we can say that we are similar.
Dhamma ဆွေမျိုးပေါ့လေတကယ်ရင်းနှီးတဲ့ဓမ္မဆွေမျိုးဒီလိုပဲသဘောထားပါတယ်ဘုန်းကြီးတို့
The country where the Sayadaw comes from is also pretty far, quite far away from America. Values in society and social customs and traditions may not be the same But because the people present in the center are those who are interested in practicing the teaching of the Buddha, Sayadaw regards all of you as intimate members of this great Dhamma family.
ဒီတော့မြတ်စွာဘုရားကအစအဆုံးမြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့သားတော်ဖြစ်တဲ့ရာဟုလာလေးအထီပေါ့လေအစစ်စစ်အဆက်ဆက်လာခဲ့တာပြီးတော့မိမိဟာမျိုးဆက်အဖြစ်ယခုညံ့သူမဟုတ်ဘူးဆိုတာပေါ့လေအစစ်စစ်ဆက်ဆက်လာခဲ့ပြီးတော့ခုနမြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့သားတော်ရာဟုလာရဲ့ညီတော်လေးပဲနှမတော်လေးပဲအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေဟာသာသနာ့ဘောင်ဝင်ပြီးတော့တရားတွေအားထုတ်ကြလို့လုံလဝိရိယမလျှော်ဘဲနဲ့နောက်ဆုံးယဟနာဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ဘဝဆက်သိမ်းသွားကြတာဝိရိယလျှောက်လို့တော့မဖြစ်ဘူးဆိုပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီလိုဆွေမျိုးဆက်ပြီးတော့လည်းပဲမြင့်မြတ်တဲ့ဆွေမျိုးပေါ့လေတော်ဆက်တဲ့အနေကိုလည်းပဲစဉ်းစားဆင်ခြင်ပြီးတော့ဝိရိယကိုတိုးမြှင့်ပေးရပါတယ်
We can thus reflect on the greatness of the lineage. As we belong to this great lineage by virtue of our practice, we can regard ourselves as Rahula's brothers and sisters. We can reflect on the fact that the brothers and sisters during the Buddha's time were men and women of great industry, were men and women of great courage, who strove with heroic effort and know not how to surrender. They strove on diligently until they attained liberation from all suffering, until they were free from oppression by the kilesas. And we belong to that great lineage. We must live up to such great distinction and not entertain any thoughts at all of surrendering or sloppiness. If one is able to reflect on the greatness of the lineage in this way, it can be a great source of inspiration. It can help to boost up your energy tremendously while you are practicing.
နောက်တစ်ခုကသဗ္ဗမจาရိမဟာတ္တပိစ္ဆဝခဏပကြွခဏတာတရားကျင့်ပေါ်ကျင့်ဘက်ဖြစ်ကြတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များရဲ့မြင့်မြတ်ပုံကိုပေါ့လေစင်ញနှလုံးသွင်းခြင်းဖြင့်ဝိရိယကိုတိုးမြှင့်ပေးပါတဲ့
The eighth factor is to arouse energy by reflecting on the greatness of our fellow Dhammafarers.
Sabramajari ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဆိုတာမြတ်စွာဘုရားရဲ့အဆုံးအမကိုအညီအမျှကျင့်သူချင်းပေါ့တရားကျင့်ဖို့ကျင့်ဘက်ကိုပြောပါတယ်။ဖျားလက်တဲ့တော်ကာလကတော့Sabramajari ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်၅ဦးရှိပါတယ်။ဘိက္ခုနီပြီးတော့ စိတ်ခမာနဆိုတာတူရှိပါတယ်နောက်စာမဏေရစာမဏေရီ5ဦးပါအခုတော့ဘိက္ခုနီသာသနာကထေရဝါဒမှာတော့ကွယ်ပသွားတာဖြစ်တော့ဘိက္ခုနဲ့စာမဏေရဒီ2မျိုးပဲရှိပါတော့တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လို့ခေတ်အားလျော်စွာသီလရှင်ယောဂီများလည်းပဲသဗ္ဗမကြာရီတဲ့ထည့်နိုင်ပါတယ်ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့သူတို့လည်းပဲသူတို့နဲ့တန်တော့သီလသမာဓိပညာကျင့်တရားတွေကျင့်နေတာတူတော့လည်းတူးနေတာ
The Pali word for the translation that was given just now of Dhammafara is actually brahmachari, those who lead the holy life. During the time of the Buddha and many years after that, these people, these fellow brahmacharis, fellow Dhammafaras, comprise bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, sikkhamanas, samaneras and samaneris. Bhikkhu is a monk, bhikkhuni is a nun, sikhamana is a probation nun, and samaneri is a novice nun, and samanera is a novice bhikkhu. In the course of the unfolding of the ages, the bhikkhuni sangha became extinct as far as the Theravada tradition is concerned. Therefore, strictly speaking, right now we have only two types of brahmacharis, those who lead the holy life, bhikkhus and samaneras, bhikkhus and novices. However, in keeping up with the times, we can perhaps regard anagarikas, tilashin, nuns, as well as yogis as part of the group of people who lead the holy life. This is because yogis as a whole, no matter whether they are bhikkhus, novices or not, have within them certain virtues of purity with regard to morality, concentration, and wisdom.
Yaleteka Bhikkhu bai saya so lo shi Shintari Buddha ro Shimabula no Eka Sawaka phit de pukkul ri Shimakatwa asa shi de Maha Sawaka ri paw. Da ri tu do longlawariya tha pi lo athuk ja lo Meliba Pholiba Nibbanaတရားကိုပေါက်ပေါက်ရောက်ရောက်ပုံမှန်လင်းလင်းသူတို့တည်သွားကြတာဘိက္ခုနီဘာပိုင်းဆိုင်ရာကလည်းဒီလိုတော့ဂေါရမီကအစအားလုံးပေါ့လေဝိရိယတထားပြီးတော့ကြိုးစားကြလို့ယန္တာထီဒီမှာရည်ရည်ကြီးဖြစ်သွားတာဒီတော့မိမိဟာအဲ့ဒီပုံကိုယ်တွေတဲ့တယောက်အပါဝင်ပဲတယောက်အပါဝင်ဖြစ်လို့ရှိရင်သူတို့လမ်းစဉ်မိမိပြည့်ပြည့်ဝဝဖြောက်မြောက်လိုက်ကြလားမလိုက်ဘူးလားဆိုတာပေါ့လေစဉ်းရပါတယ်ချီရတော့လမ်းစဉ်အမှန်ကိုရှောက်လို့ယန္တာထီဒီမှာရည်ရည်ဖြစ်သွားကြပြီသူတို့ရှောက်တဲ့လမ်းစဉ်ရှောက်သလားမရှောက်ဘူးလားဆိုတာပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေရဲ့ မြင့်မြတ်ပုံပေါ့လေဝိရိယထားပြီးတော့ကြိုးစားလို့မြင့်မြတ်ပုံလေးတွေပေါ့လေဆင်ရင်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဝိရိယတွေကထူးခြားတက်လာတတ်တယ်
During the time of the Buddha, we have such great people of distinction as the Venerable Sariputta, the Venerable Moggallana, the right and left hand great disciples of the Buddha. We have also the Venerable Mahakassapa, a very distinctive and distinguished elder during the Buddha's time. And of course we have the other great disciples as well as the noble ones. In the Bhikkhuni Sangha, we have the Venerable Mahagautami and her followers, as well as other bhikkhunis who were great and courageous women, strivers for the Dhamma. All these people, all these men and women of distinction are our comrades at arms. They are our fellow Dhammafarers. They are our comrades in the holy life. We should try to reflect on their greatness, their courage, their commitment. And in that sort of reflection, we may ask ourselves whether we fulfill that same level, that same high standard of endeavor, courage, endurance, and perseverance. We may perhaps be very encouraged by the fact that we have the support of all these great individuals as our comrades at arms. And so, reflecting, one can be inspired to put more effort in your practice. So this is the 8th way of arousing energy.
အဲ့ဒီတည်းကအရွယ်ကြီးသွားပြီမဲ့လို့လုံလောက်ရထားပြီးတော့ကြိုးစားအားထုတ်တဲ့အတွက်ယန္နာထေရီမာကြီးဖြစ်သွားတဲ့အထိအကျိုးရပုံထူလေးတစ်ခုထုတ်ပြပါမယ်သောနာထေရီတဲ့ဒီသောနာထေရီအကြောင်းလေးထုတ်ပြပါမယ်
Sayadaw would like to narrate a tale of a very distinguished elder in the Bhikkhuni Sangha who, in spite of her frail body and advanced age, strove with courage and perseverance to realize the prized goal of enlightenment. Her name was Sonateri.
သူမဟာလူဘဝမှာတော့အိမ်အောင်နဲ့နေပြီးတော့အိမ်အောင်ကြပြီးတော့သားသမီး10ယောက်ရပါတယ်သားရီသမီးတွေလည်းပဲအလုံးအိမ်အောင်နေနဲ့ဖြစ်သွားပါပြီသူခင်မွန်းတဲ့ကဘိက္ခုတန်ခါမှာရဟန်းဖြစ်ခံယူပြီးတော့သွားတော့သူလည်းပဲတဝေကဖြစ်လို့နဲ့တူပါတယ်ရှိသမျှပစ္စည်းတွေအကုန်လုံးသားရီသမီးတွေအပ်ထားသေးတယ် Atavido Ediluvetu, Pikuni, Pudive, Nini Badi.
Pikuni, Pudive.
Pidigan.
Manu.
To Yoja Saga, PC, Konotari, the media, quote will be up later. To Yojaga, Tari, the media, the lazy, to Julie May, so you general, a Kono quote will be later.
Sona was married before she became a bhikkhuni. She was married and had quite a big family by today's standards. She had 10 children. And one by one, they settled down and each had a family of their own. Finally, when all of them were married off, her husband decided to renounce the world to become a bhikkhu. Perhaps the decision of her husband made her realize the urgency of living this particular life. Perhaps it gave her a great sense of spiritual urgency. For shortly afterwards, she collected all the property that had amassed through their marriage and distributed them amongst her children, expecting each of them to support her in turns.
Tu Myolinjane, Tadmi, Quay with a PC beta. The lazy, Tadmi, to toppingly mess with it. Myolinjane never neither. But Ama Asaro, the lazy, Lelevido, Niru, Chibuja. Now, Jadam, Chibu. Lu resolution, Lungaria, David of Chipation. For you 4 years. Would you 4 years, Conasejo, Chausejo, Conaselo, or Shiva Lema? Tadami say out, or Tadami in Ojabi, so the Loba Shilim. Do Uris or Lungaria Day Yone. Who tired the meeting to me in Shitabu, the 4 years, Yona. My Gibiro. Let me give you 4 years, 12 years, near Baro, go Tatira. Oh, Jabama Solution, that meeting, Ibari Pipede, Theology, Haragilo later. Oh, come not 12 share it. I didn't need to use your government. Who made it come, that is the meeting, Pit Hallo. You Peter Boguri, Eddie 12 and Nisha, they come.
At first, she was quite happy as she went on her rounds, not as a bhikkhuni though. She went from one family to another, from one of her sons to her daughters to another son and so forth. It was quite fun to be with different families. But as is common knowledge, young people have a great disdain for the elderly. Young people tend to look upon the older generation as a nuisance. You've just started a new family, happily living together with your mate and maybe a child or two. And here comes mom-in-law. She must have been pretty old by then, maybe about 60 or 70. Imagine having to put up with that old lady every time she comes around. And so she felt kind of slighted. And of course we cannot blame her. This is human nature. she felt very slighted being given that sort of treatment as she went from one child's family to another. She was very depressed and very sad. It was not a very noble sort of life for her. She felt kind of ignoble doing this moving from one place to another, from one child to another child, without really feeling being wanted or loved, feeling like being just a nuisance. So she was trying to find a way of escape, how to get out of this situation. Luckily, she was a wise woman. Unlike what would have happened in Japan, where perhaps the parent might just do harakiri and commit suicide because of that. She didn't do that. Suicide was not a wise thing for her to do. So she considered the possibilities of escape. Sayadaw feels that doubtless there are parents in America too who may perhaps find such a situation familiar. Sayadaw hopes that such parents may be as wise as Sona in looking for an appropriate way of escape.
သူ့ဖို့ရတော့သားသမီးတွေကသူ့ကိုမကြည်ပြုလို့ပြစ်ထားတာလဲတော်တော်ကောင်းတာပဲသူကဘာလုပ်တယ်လဲဘိက္ခုနီမကျောင်းသွားပြီးတော့ဘိက္ခုနီမကြီးလုပ်တယ်အရွယ်ကအိုတော့လမ်းလည်းကောင်းမလျှောက်နိုင်ရှာဘူးစွန့်ကလည်းမလိုက်နိုင်ဘူးမလိုက်နိုင်တော့စွန့်ကကြွားတဲ့ဘိက္ခုနီမများအတွက်အလုံးတန်ဃာဘိက္ခုနီတန်ဃာအတွက်ရည်နွေးကြိုရတယ်သူကရည်နွေးကြိုရင်သူကစဉ်းစားတယ်မိမိဟာကြီးမှဘိက္ခုနီမလုပ်ရတာအဲ့တော့ရွယ်ကြီးမှလုပ်ရတာဖြစ်တော့ပေါ့ပေါ့ဆာဆာနေလို့မဖြစ်ဘူးပြင်းပြင်းကြီးနေလို့မဖြစ်ဘူးလုံလဝရိယထားပြီးတော့ကြိုးစားအားထုတ်မယ်ဆိုတဲ့ဤမျှော်ချက်နဲ့ပေါ့လေတရားပဲသူကြိုးစားအားထုတ်တာဝိရိယတ၃မျိုးထားပြီးတော့သူအားထုတ်တာ
Perhaps the unloving miscare of her children was a blessing in disguise, for it prompted her to leave home to become a bhikkhuni, which she did. She went to a nunnery where the bhikkhunis were and begged for ordination. She was duly ordained, but because she was so old, she could not go for alms round daily. Neither could she do other tasks that were required of the bhikkhunis, except to boil water for those bhikkhunis who went on alms round, as well as for the bhikkhuni sangha as a whole. But she was a very intelligent woman. She reflected on the situation and realized the fact that she had left home at a very advanced age. Being so old now, she thought to herself, it is not proper for me to live a heedless life. I must not be sloppy or lazy. Being old now, there is hardly enough time, I must make use of this opportunity to practice meditation and activate these three elements of effort. There is no time to waste. Every second counts.
ဘယ်လောက်ဒီသူကြိုးစားအားထုတ်တယ်လဲဆိုရင်အရွယ်ကအိုတော့တုံတုံကြည့်ကြည့်နဲ့လမ်းကောင်းမလျှောက်နိုင်ရှာဘူးဒါမှမဟုတ်အရှုံးမပေးဘူးကျောင်းတိုင်းကိုလက်တစ်ဖက်ကကင်ပြီးတော့ပေါ့လေကျောင်းတိုင်းကိုကင်ပြီးတော့ပတ်ပတ်လည်းစဉ္ညာလျှောက်တယ်ပြီးတော့အပြင်မှာတောထဲမှာစဉ္ညာလျှောက်လို့ရှိရင်တစ်ပင်ကိုကင်ပြီးတော့စဉ္ညာလျှောက်တယ်ဒီလောက်ထိပဲကြိုးစားတာမလျှော့ဘူးပတ်ပတ်လှည့်ပြီးတော့လျှောက်တာပေါ့လေ
But poor Sona, she was so old and frail, she could hardly walk. But she had a very strong heart. And she was a very courageous and heroic woman. She persisted in doing her walking meditation in spite of her frailty. She was ingenious, for she did her walking meditation by holding on to the wall that surrounded the nunnery. And she went round in circles so that she could keep a firm hold on the wall. When she did her walking meditation in the forest, she would make sure that there was enough trees around so that she could steady herself by holding on to the trees.
ရွယ်အိုဝေမယ်လို့စိတ်ဓာတ်ကခိုင်မာတော့ပြင်းထန်တဲ့လုံလဝိရိယထားပြီးတော့ကြိုးစားတော့မကြခင်မဲ့သူကိလေသာကုံကယန္တာထေတီမာကြီးဖြစ်သွားတယ်
Although she was old and frail, because she was so firm and had such great resolution in her heart that through her diligent and persistent efforts, in a very short time, she became an arahant, one who was fully enlightened, free completely from all the kilesas. တကယ်လို့သာသူသားတွေသမီးတွေကမိခင်ရဲ့ကျေးဇူးသိပြီးတော့ကြည်ပြူနဲ့တလှည့်စီပေါ့လေပြုစုနေမယ်ဆိုရင်သားတွေသမီးတွေမြည်တွေနဲ့ပေါ့လေထွေးလာလုံးလာဖြစ်ပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီတဲ့နေမွန်းသွားမှာပြီးတော့သားတွေသမီးတွေကပြစ်ပယ်တာလေကောင်းတောင်းတောင်းပဲရှုံးနေရအမျက်တွေထွက်သွားတာနောက်ယန္နာထီဒီမာကြီးဖြစ်တဲ့ခါကျတော့သူဟာတဲ့သားတွေသမီးတွေပြစ်ပယ်လိုက်လို့ဘိက္ခုနီမှာအကြောင်းရောက်ရှိပြီးတော့ဘုလိုလုံးလဝရိယထားပြီးတော့အာထုတ်တဲ့အတွက်သမဏစုခခေါ်တဲ့ယဟန်ချမ်းသာတွေရလိုက်တာတဲ့ဥဒ္ဒဏီကျူးကျူးပြီးတော့လေသိဝင်တာသွားတာ We can see that it was because of the ingratitude of her children in not caring for her lovingly and properly that she ended up in the nunnery. If in fact her children had been very grateful and showed her real care and love, you can imagine how she would have been engulfed in the worldly happiness of playing with her grandchildren and living in comfort in each of her children's families. But now it was different. It was because of ill treatment by her children that she now had this golden opportunity to strive with unfailing resolution to become an arahant. So the Venerable Sona Theri, after her enlightenment, used to sing aloud in praise of a situation. Oh, look at this world, how people get caught up in family life and enjoy their worldly happiness. But for me, because I have been mistreated by my children, and I have left my family to lead this life of a renunciate, I now am able to reap the fruits of renunciation.
အဲ့ဒီဘိက္ခုနီမကြီးကတော့ဘိက္ခုနီမလုပ်ဖို့ရဘိက္ခုနီကျောင်းကရှိနေတော့သွားတဲ့အခါအစဉ်နဲ့ဖြစ်သွားပါတယ်ခုခေတ်ဘိက္ခုနီသာသနာကမရှိတော့အကြောင်းတစ်ခုကြောင့်ဘိက္ခုနီမလုပ်လို့တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်များဘိက္ခုနီမတော့မဖြစ်ဘူးပေါ့လေဒါပေမဲ့ဘိက္ခုကျောင်းတော့လာခဲ့ဘိက္ခုကျောင်းလာခဲ့လို့ရှိရင်ဝီနိထုံးစံအရဘိက္ခုနီမမဟုတ်ပြီမဲ့လို့တုတ်တန်ဤအရဘိက္ခုလုပ်ပေးနိုင်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါဘုန်းကြီးကဖိတ်ကြားပါတယ်ဘာမှအခွင့်အရေးမဆုံးရှုံးပါဘူးဒီမှာဘိက္ခုနီတော့မဟုတ်ဘူးဘိက္ခုကိုဖြစ်မှာ
During those times, it was quite convenient and easy to run to a nunnery and ask for ordination as a bhikkhuni. Nowadays, however, as far as the Theravada tradition is concerned, this opportunity of being a bhikkhuni is unfortunately no longer there. However, do not despair. If indeed there is anyone here who wishes to renounce the world and live the life akin to that of a bhikkhuni, Sayadaw invites them to go to a monastery instead. Although, strictly speaking, it will not be possible to make a bhikkhuni out of you in strict accordance with the code of discipline for the Sangha. Sayadaw assures you that he can make a bhikkhu out of you in accordance. He can make a bhikkhu out of you in accordance with the suttas.
I think those are bhikkhu bhikkhuni ပြဿနာလည်းမဖြစ်တော့ဘူးအကုန်လုံးဘိက္ခုကြီးပဲဆိုတော့ဒရမ်းစားတဲ့ဖြစ်သွားတာတားတော်ကောင်းသေးတယ်
You can see then that there is actually no loss of privileges. In fact, it may be even much more appropriate considering our modern times. If everybody becomes just bhikkhus, there will be no problem. Nobody is going to complain about inequality.
I don't see any more lady or Taragari, Yashi, but Ella biology, be my photo. And she is John who said yes. She is John who are good deed that Pokala, pretty was not that. Be the Poko, Shang Shajin.
There are many other stories which are very inspiring in connection with this particular factor that conduces to arousing energy. If we were to go through all of them, it is very unlikely that we can bring this lecture to an end. Therefore, the Sayadaw would like to move on to the next point, which is avoiding the company of lazy bones.
Kutita Pugula Sara Chamabau Say that to me, Tinya to me, Bede a toe no Majabu Poco Pero Tindalosa Tindalo Valley Chanyanta Nira Pipia on Savira, Zavaji Mujimia Valley Pipia on Savira, Malomichania, Penny. Kaika Voria, Sidica Voria body. Pretty Voria, Namupa, Mamasi, Pinti Pinduan, and Niraboguri. Ediboguri, Dwaviro, Chingaludo, Voria Dabe, Kusan, Namale, Ediboguri, we shall mad, and we shall near Action level, Voria level to the last name.
Lazy people here refer to those who are not only disinterested, or rather uninterested in mental development, but who have never heard of the word meditation before. Such people are given to the habit of indulging in the sensual pleasures, eating as much as they want, sleeping as much as they want, and having as much fun as they feel like it. They just eat and sleep and make merry. They're like the python. The python will just wallop up its prey and stay immobile for many hours because its stomach is so full. How can one ever be inspired to put forth energy if one happens to keep company with such lazy bones? One would very easily be drawn by their influence and would in no time become a member of the gang. Therefore, the avoidance of such lazy company can be seen as a positive step in arousing energy.
Narakuga Arada Wiria Pukala Tiwanata Aduada Wiria Shidu Wiria Miedu Kaimadu Poku Miwajin.
The next factor is association with those who are endowed with developed, enduring, and persevering energy.
Any Poku are Sita di Mimia Vida Diaru Yashi ye to a body, Ninja ye, seeing a pit and neighbor Uti Vida. You just come on the wind labi. Tema tying like senior show like tying like senior show like body. Manivana body. Kaika Uria, Sidica Uria Tabi Atolida. Atolo Uria ha, Yalemanu. You know, outlet jam the wabu. The PV Uria told me to me, Tete Lara. Josa Atu de Pogo. Very Pogo, you were there. Tying like Taraja, Piamiro. ကိုအေးရတွားပြီးတော့အပန်းဖြေလိုက်လဲလိုက်စသည်ပေါ့လေမှာအညောင်းဖြေလိုက်အဲ့လိုပုံကူမျိုးမဟုတ်ဘူးဈဉ္ညာနဲ့အထိုင်ကိုအလေးထားပြီးတော့ပေါ့လေကိုယ်နဲ့တည်းမငဲ့မကွယ်ဖဲနဲ့စွန့်စားပြီးတော့အထုတ်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်အဲ့ဒီပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ညီဝဲမှာသူ့ရဲ့လုံလဝရိယဓာတ်တွေလည်းကုဆက်နိုင်တယ်ပြီးတော့အထုတ်တဲ့နီးတွေလည်းပဲရရှိနိုင်တယ်အဲ့ဒီလိုပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ညီဝဲစိကလို့ရှိရင်လုံလဝရိယဓာတ်တွေမြင့်တယ်လာတတ်တယ်ဒါကြောင့်အာရတဝရိယပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ညီဝဲပါတဲ့
More specifically, this refers to a yogi who is in retreat, who has started the meditation with a very noble intention or motivation of wanting to realize Nibbana, which is liberation from kilesas, liberation from suffering. And such a yogi, having such a noble aim in mind, puts forth unfailing energy from moment to moment, both physically as well as mentally. This is a yogi who is fully and totally committed to the Dhamma, giving top priority to sitting and walking meditation, while being persistently and consistently effortful in trying to be mindful of miscellaneous activities. We are not referring to a yogi by name who sits now and then gets up and take a rest, or gets up and stretches himself or herself doing a few push-ups or a few exercises, or going for a walk to stretch the muscles, and then coming back to sit again for maybe another hour, and then going off again to rest for another 2 or 3 hours. That is only a yogi by name. We're referring to one who is totally committed to the Dhamma, who is enduring and resolute in being effortful, trying to activate mindfulness from moment to moment, trying to maintain that high standard of progressive or persistent energy, which is that effort which does not stagnate nor decrease, but is always stepping up until the ultimate goal is reached. If one is able to keep the company of such people, their efforts and diligence can be very contagious. One can get the good vibes, so to speak, and the influence can be very great. They become very strong and powerful sources of inspiration. You can learn from them, you can look at them, for they are model yogis, and you can emulate their behavior, their practice, which will conduce to your own development.
ကိုကြီးထွားကြမ်းမာရေးတဲ့စိတ်ကြီးထွားကြမ်းမာရေးကိုအလေးပေးတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဟာအာရတဝိရိယပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ပါပဲ
Those who give top priority to mental health over physical health can rightly be called those who are endowed with developed, persistent, and persevering effort.
နောက်ဆုံးကတော့တတ္တိမုတ်တတာတဲ့အဲ့ဒီဝိရိယဖြစ်ရေးမှာအမြဲတမ်းစိတ်ဟာကိုက်ညွတ်ပြီးတော့အလေးထားရမယ်တဲ့အလေးထားခြင်းနဲ့
The last factor conducive to arousing of energy is the persistent inclination of the mind toward the activation of persistent energy.
တွားရထိုင်လျော်အရိယဘုလေးမျိုးလုံးမှာထင်ရှားပေါ်တဲ့အာယုန်တိုင်းကိုမလွတ်တမ်းမှတ်နိုင်ပြီးတော့သဘောမှန်နေအစဉ်စဉ်တည်သွားအောင်လို့ကြောက်ကြထားတာဝိရိယရှိရတာမလွတ်စီရဘူးဆိုတာစိတ်အားဆိုင်မှုလေးတွေတစ်စိရှိနေရတာအဲ့ဒါလို့စိတ်အားဆိုင်မှုစိတ်ရစွမ်းအင်လေးတွေအမြဲတစေဖြစ်ဖို့ရာအတွက်အမြဲတမ်းစိတ်ကအလေးထားတာဒီမှာတိတ်ညွတ်ထားတာဝိရိယဖြစ်ရင်တော်ပြီဘယ်လိုပဲဖြစ်ဝိရိယဖြစ်ဖို့သာအရေးကြီးတာပဲဆိုတာပေါ့ဒီဝိရိယကိုအလေးထားတာအဲ့ဒီအလေးထားပြီးတော့အားထုတ်နေလို့ရှိရင်စိတ်ကဒီမှာအလေးထားပြီးတော့ကိုင်းညွတ်အားထုတ်တော့ဖြစ်လို့ရှိရင်အပြည့်မဖြစ်ဘူးကောသစ္စအပြင်းတရားမဖြစ်ဘူးဝိရိယတရားကြီးပဲဆက်ကဖြစ်သွားမှာပဲဒီမှာအသိအရေးကြီးပါတယ်သူကလည်းဖြစ်ချင်းနေဖြစ်တဲ့လောက်တော့ဖြစ်မှာပေါ့ဆိုပြီးတော့ငကိုယ်ရဲ့ကိုယ်ကစိတ်ခါရွထားပြီးတော့အလုပ်လုပ်လို့ရှိရင်ဘယ်တော့မှဝိရိယမဖြစ်ဘူးဝိရိယမဖြစ်ရင်တရားထုလည်းရမှာမဟုတ်ဘူးအဲ့လိုသဘောကိုပြောပါတယ်ဒါနောက်ဆုံးအကြောင်းပါပဲ
The key to this principle is to adopt a very resolute stance. I will try to be as mindful as I can of every activity, of everything that happens in all that I do, whether it is sitting or walking or moving from one place to another or other miscellaneous minor activities. I will not allow the mind to absent-mindedly space out. I will not allow a moment of mindfulness to be missing. I will try to be as effortful as possible each moment without missing any. This very firm and resolute stance is very important. For if one were to just adopt a very good and careless attitude, your practice can become very sloppy. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to try, and if mindfulness is there, then it's good. If it's not there, then just too bad. Now that sort of attitude is very self-defeating. If you have that sort of attitude, your attempts would be doomed from the very start. With such a resolution, however, every moment can be charged with that courageous effort, with a very consistent and enduring energy. Now this sort of energy has the great power of being able to displace any eruptions of laziness, or even if they are not eruptions, they may creep in very slowly. But if this very tiptoe sort of energy is there, it can be caught right at this moment of arising. You can nip it at the bud, so to speak. This kutissa, or laziness, sloth and torpor, a feeling of laziness, giving up, can be very undermining. And it is indeed a great and very subversive element in the course of meditative practice.
နောက်ဆုံးအကြောင်းပါပဲအခုပြခဲ့ညွှန်ကြားခဲ့တဲ့အတိုင်းဝိရိယရဲ့အကြောင်းတွေကိုဖြည့်စွမ်းနိုင်ပြီးတော့ဝိရိယတွေတစ်ဆင့်နဲ့တစ်ဆင့်တက်ပြီးတော့နောက်ဆုံးအရေးကြီးတဲ့ကိလေသာတွေကိုပယ်တတ်နိုင်လောက်တဲ့အထိရှင်ရင်းကြီးရဖြစ်တဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်ရောက်အောင်ကြိုးစားပွားများအထောက်နိုင်ကြပါစေလို့ဒီနေ့တရားအဆုံးသတ်လိုက်ပါတယ်
This subversive element can be exterminated by effort, courageous, persistent, persevering, enduring effort. Sayadaw hopes that you will be able to arouse energy within you through any of the ways that were mentioned, so that you can make swift progress in the path and eventually attain that path fruition, that path consciousness, which will uproot the appropriate kilesas.